A young girl vanished at a small-town Sunday market, disappearing after being out of sight for just a fleeting moment. 2 years later, a shocking discovery inside a loaf of bread changes everything. Jennifer Walsh sat in the windowless interview room of the Oakdale Police Department, a place she'd come to know all too well over the past 2 years. The walls were a pale institutional green, adorned with a single corkboard displaying community notices and safety pamphlets. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, casting shadows under Jennifer's tired eyes as she recounted for what felt like the 100th time, the day her 12-year-old daughter Sophie vanished. "We arrived at the market around 9, Jennifer said mechanically, her words polished smooth by repetition. Sophie was in a good mood that morning. She'd been looking forward to it all week. She took a deep breath, revisiting that Sunday morning at the farmer's market. How Sophie had been thrilled about getting fresh pastries from local vendors. How Jennifer had let her walk just a few stalls ahead to look at a display of handmade bracelets while she paid for produce, and how those 3 minutes of separation had turned into a lifetime of anguish when she looked up to find her daughter gone without a trace. Detective Martinez sat across from her at the metal table, his notepad open, though he hadn't written anything new in months. The detective, a man in his early 50s with salt and pepper hair and weathered skin that spoke of years in the field, had been assigned to Sophie's case from the start. Jennifer noticed his pen hovering above the paper, as if waiting for her to suddenly recall a crucial detail that had eluded them all this time. Her gaze drifted to the wall, lost in memory. She was so happy that morning, Jennifer murmured, her voice catching. Chattering about that fantasy series she loved, The Moonstone Chronicles. She'd just started the 5th book and couldn't stop talking about what might happen to Princess Arya. I can almost hear her theories now. Her voice broke. Just before everything went quiet. She pressed her lips together, fighting tears. When I looked up, she was gone. Just vanished. No trace. The last words were barely a whisper, swallowed by the sterile quiet of the room. I know this is difficult, Martinez said, his tone gentle but professional, but going over these details again might help us see something we missed before. Jennifer nodded, though she didn't believe it. They'd dissected that Sunday morning hundreds of times, interviewed every vendor and shopper they could find. Nothing had come of it. Detective Martinez slid a folder toward her containing the latest field reports from patrol officers who still occasionally followed up on Sophie's case. He spoke softly, explaining they'd interviewed 3 more people who responded to the renewed flyers Jennifer had distributed last month, but none of the leads panned out. Jennifer nodded mechanically, used to disappointment. The folder held photos she'd memorized, Sophie before she disappeared. The sight of her daughter's face, frozen in that last moment of happiness, sent a familiar jolt of pain through Jennifer's chest. We're not giving up, Martinez assured her, though they both knew the reality. After 2 years, the chances of finding Sophie dwindled with each passing day. Missing children cases rarely ended happily after so much time. Jennifer reached into her bag and pulled out a small notebook filled with her own meticulously documented observations and leads. As an elementary school librarian, organization was her strength, and she'd applied those skills to her daughter's case with desperate intensity. She flipped through pages of handwritten notes, cross-references, and annotated maps. I've been thinking about the delivery man who mentioned seeing a girl who looked like Sophie near Westlake Park last month, she said, her finger tracing a line of neat handwriting. I went there every day for a week, same time, but didn't see anything. But what if we expanded the search radius? What if he saw her on her way somewhere else? Martinez watched with a mix of admiration and concern. He'd seen how Jennifer's pursuit had consumed her life, forcing her to take an extended leave from the school where she once found joy introducing children to books. Her persistence was remarkable and heartbreaking. We'll look into it, he promised, though they both knew it was likely another dead end. A sudden ringtone cut through the room's somber atmosphere. Jennifer fumbled in her bag for her special phone, the one with a number printed on all of Sophie's missing posters, dedicated solely to tips about her daughter. Her hands trembled as she pulled it out, a flicker of hope lighting her features despite countless disappointments. "Hello," she answered, her voice carefully controlled. Detective Martinez straightened in his chair, watching Jennifer's expression shift from cautious hope to stunned disbelief. The color drained from her face as she listened. Her free hand gripped the table's edge, knuckles whitening. "You found what?" she whispered, barely audible. Martinez leaned forward, concern etched on his face. "I'll be right there," Jennifer said, ending the call. She looked at Martinez, eyes wide. That was Brenda Collins, a fifth-grade teacher from the neighborhood just a few streets away. She found... Jennifer's voice broke. She found Sophie's bracelet in a loaf of bread. Jennifer's knuckles turned white as she gripped the steering wheel of her sedan, following Detective Martinez's police cruiser through Oakdale's familiar streets. Her mind raced with possibilities, tempered by too many false alarms over the past 2 years to fully embrace hope. There was the psychic who claimed Sophie was near water. The town had a lake, making the vision conveniently vague. The reported sighting at a mall 3 counties over that turned out to be another child. The anonymous caller who demanded money for information that never materialized. Yet something in Brenda Collins' voice felt different, genuine shock rather than misplaced certainty. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the residential streets as Jennifer followed Martinez into a quiet subdivision of ranch-style homes. Oakdale's neighborhoods were typical: neat lawns, modest houses, bicycles abandoned in driveways by kids called in for dinner. It was the kind of place where people felt safe, where parents let their children play outside without constant supervision. Jennifer had once believed that too. They pulled up to a yellow house with white trim and tidy flower beds. Brenda Collins's home. Jennifer recognized it from a school function she'd attended before Sophie disappeared, back in another lifetime when her calendar held PTA meetings and school events instead of police appointments and search efforts. Brenda opened the door before they could knock, her face pale with concern. As a 5th-grade teacher at Oakdale Elementary, she'd known Sophie well, having taught her the year before she vanished. She was petite, mid-40s, with short auburn hair and kind eyes now filled with worry. "Jennifer," she said, squeezing Jennifer's arm. "Detective Martinez, thank you for coming so quickly." Jennifer stepped inside, catching the familiar scent of chalk and art supplies that clung to teachers even at home. Martinez followed, his presence solid and reassuring. The house was neat but lived in, with stacks of papers to grade on the dining table and framed student artwork on the walls. Jennifer spotted one of Sophie's watercolors, a multicolored dragon soaring over a castle, and her throat tightened. "It's in the kitchen," Brenda said, leading them through the living room. "I was about to make a sandwich for lunch when..." She trailed off, shaking her head in disbelief. In the kitchen, a partially sliced loaf of bread sat on a wooden cutting board, a serrated knife beside it, its blade catching the overhead light. Jennifer's eyes locked on something unusual protruding from the cut surface. Purple and blue beads embedded in the bread. As she leaned closer, her breath caught. A heart-shaped amethyst pendant was nestled among the beads, partially visible in the loaf's soft interior. She didn't need a closer look to know it was Sophie's bracelet, the one she'd given her daughter for her 10th birthday, the same one visible on Sophie's wrist in photos from the market the day she disappeared. "I was slicing the bread and the knife hit something hard," Brenda explained, her voice shaky. "At first I thought it was just a tough spot in the dough, but then I saw the beads. When I recognized the heart pendant..." She looked at Jennifer. "I couldn't believe it. I remember Sophie wearing it at school." Jennifer reached for it instinctively, but Martinez gently caught her wrist, shaking his head. "We need to preserve any potential evidence," he said softly. He pulled out his phone, photographing the bread from multiple angles before using gloved hands to carefully extract the bracelet. The pendant and beads were remarkably intact, despite surviving a baking oven, the cord only slightly discolored, made of a heat-resistant material that had somehow endured the process. Jennifer collapsed into a kitchen chair, clutching the table for support as tears streamed down her face. In a broken whisper, she confirmed to Martinez that it was undoubtedly Sophie's bracelet. Brenda explained she'd bought the bread the previous evening from Franklin's Bakery on Main Street, a well-established local business run by the same family for generations. Do you still have the wrapper or bag from the bread? Martinez asked, placing the bracelet in an evidence bag. Brenda nodded, retrieving a paper bag from the recycling bin under her sink. Franklin's Bakery was printed, in gold lettering across the white bag, with a date stamp from yesterday. I don't understand, Jennifer whispered, staring at the bracelet in the evidence bag. How could Sophie's bracelet end up in a loaf of bread after 2 years? Martinez sealed the evidence bag, explaining they'd need to confirm it forensically, though he didn't doubt Jennifer's identification. We're going to find out, he assured her, his voice firm with renewed determination. This is the first tangible lead we've had in Sophie's case. We'll go to Franklin's Bakery immediately. Jennifer nodded, having learned much about police procedure over the past 2 years. She stood shakily, gathering her composure. I'm coming with you, she said. It wasn't a request. Martinez considered arguing but saw the resolve in her eyes. Stay with me at all times, he conceded, and let me do the talking. Jennifer sat in Martinez's unmarked police car, parked across from Franklin's Bakery. The late morning sun glinted off the bakery's large front windows, where fresh loaves and pastries were artfully displayed. The brick building, with its striped awning and gold-lettered sign, had been a fixture in downtown Oakdale for as long as Jennifer could remember. The scent of fresh bread wafted across the street, a smell that once brought comfort, but now made her stomach clench with anxiety. She watched as plainclothes officers entered the bakery while uniformed police formed a perimeter, their movements practiced and efficient. Martinez had insisted she stay in the car, promising to return with news as soon as possible. Through the windows, she saw an officer speaking with an older man she recognized as George Franklin, the bakery's owner and primary baker. He appeared calm, gesturing toward the back of the shop as he spoke. Time slowed to an excruciating crawl as Jennifer waited, her mind swimming with possibilities. The bakery was one of the places she distributed flyers when Sophie first disappeared. She remembered George Franklin, the elderly owner, expressing sympathy and promising to keep an eye out. He'd even donated bread for the volunteer search parties that combed the woods and parks in those first desperate weeks. Jennifer watched the police activity, wondering how her daughter's bracelet could have ended up in bread from this shop. Was it placed there at the bakery, during delivery, at the distribution center? The number of people who might have touched that dough before it became bread felt overwhelming. Through the windshield, she saw officers methodically working through the bakery. One took photos of the kitchen area visible through a swinging door at the back. Another spoke with a young cashier, a college-age girl Jennifer didn't recognize. The activity seemed thorough, but unhurried, suggesting they hadn't found anything immediately alarming. A group of onlookers gathered at the police perimeter, their expressions a mix of concern and morbid curiosity. Jennifer sank lower in her seat, not wanting to be recognized. Since Sophie's disappearance, she'd become an unwilling local celebrity, the subject of sympathetic glances and whispered conversations. Some avoided her, as if her tragedy were contagious. Others approached with awkward condolences or invasive questions. The isolation had been nearly as painful as the loss itself. After nearly 2 hours, Martinez emerged from the bakery, his expression grim as he slid into the driver's seat. He smelled of flour and yeast as he turned to Jennifer and shook his head. The officers found nothing suspicious in the bakery, he explained, disappointment in his voice. George Franklin seemed genuinely shocked about the bracelet and was fully cooperative. He provided documentation showing he receives pre-made dough from Midwest Baking Distribution, a large company supplying dozens of bakeries across the state. Jennifer's hope deflated. So it could have been put in the bread anywhere along the way, at the distribution center during transport? Martinez nodded. Franklin even called his supplier while we were there, trying to help trace the source. The representative confirmed they supplied dough to at least 30 bakeries in a 3-state area. He sighed, explaining that this complicated the investigation significantly. They'd need to examine the entire supply chain, from the distribution company to its raw ingredient suppliers, to determine how Sophie's bracelet ended up in the bread. What about Franklin himself? Jennifer asked. Did he seem suspicious in any way? Not particularly, Martinez replied. He seemed genuinely concerned and offered to assist however he could. He's been running that bakery for over 30 years, has no criminal record. Not even a parking ticket. There's nothing to indicate he'd be involved in Sophie's disappearance. Jennifer stared out the window at the bakery's cheery facade. So, what now? Martinez started the car and pulled away. We need to go to the station to process the bracelet as evidence. We'll start by contacting the distribution center, getting records of everyone who might have handled that batch of dough, and we'll check if any of their employees have connections to Sophie's case or similar incidents. The drive was mostly silent, Jennifer staring out at Oakdale's familiar streets, now transformed by the surreal events of the day. The town passed in a blur of spring colors, blooming dogwoods, fresh green grass, flower beds bright with tulips. It was the same season as when Sophie disappeared, and the similarity made Jennifer's chest ache. At the station, Jennifer waited, in a plastic chair under harsh fluorescent lights while forensic technicians photographed, measured, and swabbed the bracelet. She watched through a window as they worked, treating the small piece of jewelry like the vital evidence it was. Every so often a technician glanced up at her, their expression a mix of professional focus and personal sympathy. After an hour, Martinez approached with paperwork for her to sign. Since the bracelet was technically her property and held tremendous personal value, she could take it home as long as she agreed to make it available if needed again. Jennifer signed the forms and accepted the evidence bag containing the bracelet. The ride home was quiet, Martinez promising to call the moment they learned anything new about the distribution center. As they pulled up to her house, the setting sun cast long shadows across her front lawn. The mailbox overflowed with flyers and catalogs she hadn't bothered to collect in days. A porch light she'd left on that morning glowed weakly in the dusk. Jennifer thanked him, stepped out, and walked up her driveway. She unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and leaned against it after closing, overwhelmed by the day's emotional weight. The bracelet in its evidence bag felt impossibly heavy in her hand, a connection to her missing daughter, and a reminder of how little they knew about what happened to Sophie. Jennifer pushed herself away from the door and slumped onto the living room sofa. The air conditioner hummed steadily, the only sound in the silent house. She placed the evidence bag on the coffee table and stared at it, the purple heart pendant visible through the clear plastic. This tangible link to Sophie felt like both a blessing and a curse, the first real evidence in 2 years, yet it offered no immediate answers about her daughter's whereabouts or fate. Jennifer rose and walked to what was once her home office. She pushed open the door to what her sister now called the war room, a space dedicated entirely to finding Sophie. The walls were covered with maps of Oakdale and surrounding areas, marked with colored pins indicating search locations and possible sightings. A large corkboard displayed a timeline of the case, with index cards noting each lead, interview, and search effort. Newspaper clippings about similar cases were pinned alongside printouts of missing children's statistics and recovery stories. Stacks of missing person flyers in various designs sat on the desk ready for distribution. A bookshelf held binders of organized information, witness statements, police reports, and Jennifer's detailed notes. The room was lit by a single desk lamp, casting harsh light on the maps and photos, creating more shadows than clarity. Jennifer flipped on the overhead light and moved to the largest map, a detailed rendering of Oakdale and its surroundings. Her fingers traced a red string connecting the Sunday market, where Sophie disappeared, to various points of interest. The middle school Sophie would have attended, the park she loved, the lake where a supposed psychic claimed she might be found. Franklin's Bakery was marked on the map, but only as one of many downtown businesses where Jennifer had distributed flyers. No string connected it to any theory of Sophie's disappearance. Jennifer stared at the bakery's pin, thinking about the supply chain Martinez described. How many facilities would the dough pass through before becoming bread? How could Sophie's bracelet have entered that process? She didn't add any new connections yet, lacking enough information to form a theory, but she circled the bakery's location with a red marker, noting it as the endpoint where her daughter's bracelet had mysteriously surfaced after 2 years. The shrill ring of the house phone startled Jennifer from her thoughts. She hurried to the kitchen to answer, hoping it was Martinez with news, though she knew it was more likely her sister Karen checking in as she did every evening. Hello, Jen. It's me, Karen's voice came through. How are you doing today? Jennifer hesitated, unsure where to begin. Something happened, Karen. Something big. She explained the bracelet found in the bread, the investigation, at Franklin's bakery, and the current dead end with the distribution center. Karen listened without interrupting, gasping softly when Jennifer described recognizing Sophie's bracelet in the loaf. That's incredible, Karen said finally. Do you think this means she's alive? The question hung in the air, both exhilarating and terrifying. I don't know, Jennifer admitted, but it means something. It's the first real evidence we've had in 2 years. After promising to call if anything new developed and assuring Karen she'd try to eat something, Jennifer hung up and returned to the war room. A photo album from the day of Sophie's disappearance sat on her desk, open to the last pictures taken before her daughter vanished. Jennifer hadn't looked at these photos in months. The pain of seeing Sophie's smiling face, unaware of what was coming, had become too much. But now, with the bracelet providing the first real lead in 2 years, she forced herself to examine every detail with fresh eyes. She flipped slowly through the pages, studying the background of each shot, looking for anything or anyone that might have seemed insignificant before, but could be crucial now. The market had been bustling that day, with dozens of vendors selling everything from fresh produce to handcrafted jewelry. The photos captured slices of that atmosphere. Sophie examining flowers at one stall, Jennifer and Sophie sharing a pastry at another, Sophie posing beside a display of colorful vegetables. In one photo, Sophie stood at the Sunday market in her bright turquoise sleeveless dress, her braces visible as she smiled widely. She held a small wicker basket with pastries and bread rolls, her purple and blue beaded bracelet clearly visible on her wrist. Behind her was a bread stall with colorful sunflower-patterned tablecloths and baskets of baked goods arranged in neat rows. Jennifer's eyes widened as she recognized the vendor standing directly behind Sophie. George Franklin, in his white baker's cap and shirt, the same baker who'd shown police his supply documentation earlier that day. He was clearly visible, smiling as he arranged bread in a display basket just feet behind her daughter. Jennifer sat back, stunned by the connection. She didn't recall the police ever mentioning interviewing Franklin as a potential witness, at least not until today after the bracelet was found. Perhaps he'd seen something, someone watching Sophie or the direction she went after leaving the bread stall. She pulled out her notebook and jotted down this observation, circling it several times for emphasis. She flipped through the other photos, looking more carefully at the backgrounds, searching for Franklin in other shots. She found him in 2 more. Once in the background as Sophie examined a flower stall, and again as Jennifer and Sophie walked past his bread display. The realization that Franklin was so close to Sophie the day she disappeared sent a chill down Jennifer's spine. It could be coincidental. Franklin's bakery was a fixture at the Sunday market. But the fact that Sophie's bracelet turned up in bread from his shop after all this time felt too strange to dismiss. Jennifer turned to her computer and searched for information about George Franklin. The bakery's website was simple and outdated, stating only that Franklin's had been an Oakdale institution for over 30 years, owned and operated by George Franklin, a third-generation baker. There was little personal information about the man himself. A social media search yielded only a basic business page for the bakery with photos of breads and pastries, but nothing about Franklin personally. His minimal online presence was unusual in the digital age, but not unheard of for someone of his generation. Jennifer leaned back, her mind racing with possibilities. Could Franklin have seen something crucial the day Sophie disappeared? Could he be connected to her disappearance? The coincidence felt too significant to ignore, yet she had nothing concrete to justify her growing suspicion. She knew she should call Martinez with this discovery, but hesitated. The police had just interviewed Franklin and found nothing suspicious. Would they take her seriously if she called now with what amounted to a coincidence? That Franklin was in photos from the fly market that day? Of course he was there. His bakery had a stall. It wasn't evidence of anything nefarious. Still, Jennifer couldn't shake the feeling that this connection mattered. She resolved to speak with Franklin herself, casually, to see if he remembered anything about that day. Perhaps he'd noticed Sophie at his stall or seen her afterward. At the very least, she might learn something about how her daughter's bracelet ended up in his bread 2 years later. Decision made, Jennifer closed the photo album and checked the time. It was nearly 9 p.m., but she knew bakeries often operated on early schedules. She'd visit Franklin's first thing in the morning when the baker would likely be preparing the day's goods. She set her alarm for 5:30 a.m. and tried to sleep, but rest eluded her. Jennifer tossed and turned, her mind racing with the market photos, Sophie smiling, Franklin in the background, the bracelet on her daughter's wrist. Could the baker have seen something crucial? Could he have been overlooked in the initial investigation? The questions circled endlessly, preventing rest. She glanced at the clock, 2:17 a.m., and realized bakers often started work in the pre-dawn hours. On impulse, she decided to drive to Franklin's bakery, thinking he might already be there preparing the day's goods. This could be her chance, to speak with him without interruptions or customers. Jennifer dressed quickly, grabbed her keys, and headed downtown. Oakdale's streets were deserted at this hour, streetlights casting pools of yellow light on empty sidewalks. The town had little nightlife, even the bars closed by 1 a.m. on weeknights. She passed only one other car, a police cruiser that slowed briefly before continuing its patrol. As she approached the bakery, lights glowed from within despite the closed sign, confirming her hunch that Franklin started work while the town slept. Jennifer parked across the street, gathering her courage before approaching. Part of her knew this was impulsive, even reckless, but the desperate need for answers outweighed caution. Through the windows, she saw movement in the back of the bakery. A figure, presumably Franklin, moved between counters, though she couldn't make out exactly what he was doing. Jennifer crossed the street and approached the front door. A small side door, likely for deliveries, was nearby. As she hesitated by the main entrance, the side door opened. George Franklin emerged, carrying what appeared to be a garbage bag. He wore the same white baker's uniform from the market photos, now dusted with flour. He froze when he saw Jennifer, clearly surprised by her presence at this hour. "We're closed," he called, his voice gruff. "Won't open until 6. Jennifer stepped into the light cast by the bakery windows. "Mr. Franklin, I'm Jennifer Walsh, Sophie Walsh's mother. I was hoping I could speak with you for a moment." Recognition dawned on Franklin's face. The stark acknowledgement Jennifer had seen countless times, given to the mother whose daughter's face was on posters in his window. He hesitated, glancing back at the bakery door before setting the garbage bag by a dumpster. He approached cautiously, wiping his hands on his apron. "Mrs. Walsh, I'm sorry, but this is a strange hour for a visit." Jennifer nodded, aware of how odd this must seem. "I know, and I apologize. I couldn't sleep, and I remembered. Bakers work early hours. The police were here earlier about the bracelet found in one of your loaves." Franklin's expression softened with what seemed like sympathy. "Yes, a terrible business. I told the officers I have no idea how something like that could happen. I get my dough from Midwest distribution. Whatever was in it didn't come from my shop." "I understand," Jennifer said, keeping her voice steady. "But I was looking through photos from the day Sophie disappeared, and I noticed you were at the market. Your stall was right near where Sophie was last seen." Franklin considered this, then unlocked the door, inviting her in. "Why don't you come inside? It's chilly out here and I've just made fresh coffee." Jennifer hesitated, briefly before following him into the bakery's warmth. The familiar scent of baking bread enveloped her, bringing unexpected tears to her eyes. Sophie had loved fresh bread, always begging to stop at bakeries whenever they passed one. Franklin offered her a chair at a small table in the corner of the front area, then disappeared into the back, returning with 2 mugs of coffee and a plate of freshly baked rolls. "Just came out of the oven," he explained, setting them down. "Thank you," Jennifer said, though she had no appetite. She took a sip of coffee, gathering her thoughts. "Mr. Franklin, were you ever interviewed by the police after Sophie disappeared?" Franklin sat across from her, his weathered hands cupping his mug. "Briefly. They spoke to all the vendors at the market that day. I told them I didn't see anything unusual, which was true. It was a busy morning. Lots of customers." Jennifer nodded, pulling out her phone. I was looking at these pictures from that day. She showed Franklin the market photo, pointing to where he stood behind Sophie. You were very close to where she was last seen. He studied it, shaking his head sadly. I remember the day vaguely, but I didn't notice anything suspicious. I wish I could help you, Mrs. Walsh. That poor girl. Your daughter was such a bright thing. I remember her coming to the stall sometimes, always polite. As they talked, Jennifer noticed a small bookshelf in the corner near the employee area. Several volumes caught her attention. She squinted to see the titles, then felt her heart skip a beat as she recognized the distinctive Spines of the Moonstone Chronicles, the obscure fantasy series Sophie had been obsessed with before her disappearance. The coincidence was too striking to ignore. The series wasn't widely popular or available. Jennifer had to special order the books from a bookstore 2 towns over. She'd never met another child who read them, let alone an adult. Those books, Jennifer said, nodding toward the shelf. What a coincidence. Sophie loved that exact series. They're not very well known. She was obsessed with Princess Aria and her moonstone magic. Franklin seemed startled by her observation, quickly explaining, I enjoy reading all sorts of books in my spare time. Fantasy helps pass the time during slow afternoons. Who's your favorite character? Jennifer asked casually, knowing any true fan would have one. Sophie loved Princess Aria, but I was partial to the wizard Thorn myself. Franklin stumbled awkwardly, clearly unfamiliar with the series. Oh, I like the main boy with the sword, he offered vaguely, though no such character existed in the female-led fantasy series. He grew visibly uncomfortable, fidgeting with his apron and avoiding eye contact. I got them at a library sale, he muttered, his earlier warmth fading. I haven't had time to read them yet. He glanced at the clock and stood abruptly. I'm sorry, Mrs. Walsh, but I have much to do before opening. The morning bake won't prepare itself. Jennifer took the hint, thanking him and apologizing for the intrusion. As she left, her mind raced. Why would this baker have this specific obscure series that Sophie loved? And why did he get so nervous when she asked about it? Outside in her car, Jennifer sat gripping the steering wheel, her heart pounding. The coincidence of Sophie's bracelet, inbred from Franklin's bakery, followed by discovering he owned the same obscure book series Sophie loved, felt significant. His nervous reaction only heightened her suspicion. She reached for her phone to call Martinez, then hesitated. What would she say? That Franklin owned books her daughter liked? That he seemed nervous? It was hardly evidence of wrongdoing. Still, combined with the bracelet and his presence at the market, Jennifer couldn't shake the feeling that George Franklin knew more than he was telling. She tried calling Martinez, but got his voicemail. She left a message explaining her interaction with Franklin and the strange discovery of the rare book series, knowing how circumstantial it sounded. These books were special ordered for Sophie, she said. They weren't bestsellers you'd pick up anywhere, and he clearly hasn't read them despite claiming they're his. She ended with a plea for Martinez to call her back. Jennifer debated going home, knowing she should wait for police support, but something kept her rooted in place. She decided to watch the bakery for another hour to see if anything unusual happened. The minutes ticked by slowly as she observed Franklin moving back and forth behind the windows, preparing dough, checking ovens, arranging baked goods on cooling racks. Around 3:30 a.m., Franklin left through the side door again, carrying what appeared to be several small packages. He placed them carefully in the trunk of an older sedan parked beside the bakery, then returned inside. 15 minutes later, he emerged with another package and added it to the car. 20 minutes later, he exited again, this time without a garbage bag. He locked the door and walked purposefully down the alley toward a storage building behind the bakery. The small shed-like structure sat about 50 feet behind the main bakery, partially obscured by dumpsters. Jennifer hadn't noticed it during earlier visits, nor had she seen police approach it during their investigation. Franklin looked around furtively before unlocking the door, checking both directions before slipping inside. His secretive movement sent a chill down Jennifer's spine. This didn't seem like the behavior of a man simply checking supplies. Jennifer waited, watching the storage building. After about 10 minutes, Franklin emerged, locked the door carefully, and returned to the bakery. His posture seemed tenser, His movements hurried. Jennifer's curiosity intensified. The building didn't seem part of the main bakery space the police had searched. Franklin's secretive behavior felt odd for a man just preparing bread. Perhaps he was hiding something, records related to his supply chain or information explaining how Sophie's bracelet ended up in the dough. Jennifer weighed her options. The responsible choice was to wait for Martinez and let the police handle it. But what if Franklin removed whatever he was hiding before they arrived? What if this was her only chance to find a connection to Sophie? Jennifer decided to act. She waited until Franklin returned to the bakery, then quietly left her car. The street was deserted, no witnesses to see her cross to the alley. She moved cautiously, staying close to buildings and away from streetlights. The storage building was a simple structure, about the size of a single-car garage with weathered wooden siding and a metal roof. It matched the main bakery's age and style, perhaps originally used for coal or ice storage in earlier days. Jennifer found it locked, but a small side window offered a view inside. Using her phone's flashlight, dimmed under her fingers, she peered through the glass. The space looked like a standard storage area with shelves of flour and baking supplies. But something at the back caught her eye. A door that seemed out of place, newly installed compared to the aged wood around it. The interior door had a fresh coat of white paint and a keypad lock, suggesting it secured something more valuable than flour and sugar. Why would a small-town bakery's storage shed need such sophisticated security? Jennifer tried to see more, but the window's angle limited her view. She considered finding another way to look inside, but knew that would be trespassing, potentially compromising any evidence. Reluctantly, she retreated to her car, her suspicion fully awakened. From across the street, Jennifer continued her surveillance. The bakery's lights stayed on as Franklin worked. Occasionally, he disappeared from view, likely in parts of the bakery not visible from the street. Around 4:15 a.m., Franklin emerged from the side door, carrying a tray covered with a cloth. He went to the storage building, unlocked it, and disappeared inside. This time, he stayed for nearly 20 minutes before returning empty-handed. Just after 5 a.m., Franklin exited the bakery, looking around cautiously before heading to the storage building. This time, he carried nothing, but his furtive manner sent another wave of unease through Jennifer. She waited until he disappeared inside, then moved closer, positioning herself near the storage building's window. Through the glass, she saw the keypad-locked door was now open, revealing a hidden room. Franklin had entered, leaving the door ajar. From her angle, Jennifer could see only a small portion of the space, a cot against one wall and a table with a lamp. The realization hit her with stunning force. This wasn't just storage. It was a living space. Jennifer's heart pounded. Could Sophie be in there? Could her daughter have been held captive in this hidden room, just blocks from their home, for 2 years? The possibility was both incredible and horrifying. She strained to see more, to glimpse whoever might be inside, but Franklin's body blocked most of her view. She heard voices but couldn't make out words through the glass and distance. Jennifer retreated to her car, her hands shaking as she tried Martinez's number again. Still no answer. She debated calling 911 but hesitated. What would she report? That a baker had a secured room in his storage building, that he was bringing food to someone hidden there. It sounded paranoid without concrete evidence, and a false alarm could jeopardize the investigation. She decided to wait a little longer to gather more information. After a few minutes, she noticed Franklin hadn't emerged. Her concern grew, and she made another decision. She needed to hear what was happening in that room. She quietly exited her car and returned to the storage building, staying in the shadows. Jennifer shifted to get a better view through the window. Raised voices came from the hidden room. Franklin's voice echoed, sharp with anger, though she couldn't make out exact words. She pressed her ear closer to the glass, straining to hear. "I trusted you," Franklin's voice rang out, laced with fury. "How could you do this to me, after everything I've done for you?" "I don't understand," a younger voice replied, sounding frightened. Jennifer froze, her heart racing. The voice, higher-pitched with a slight tremor, felt hauntingly familiar. Could it be? "Don't play innocent with me," Franklin snapped. Jennifer saw him slam something on a table, not a newspaper as she first thought, but a printout. Perhaps an email or police notice. Someone found a bracelet in one of the bread loaves today. A purple heart bracelet with blue beads. The police came here with your mother. My mom. The young voice cracked with emotion. She was here? Jennifer's heart pounded, violently. The voice. Could it be Sophie's? After 2 years, her daughter's voice would have changed, but the cadence, the way the words tumbled out, sounded so much like her. You put that bracelet in the dough last night when I wasn't looking, didn't you? Franklin's voice grew dangerously quiet. No, it was an accident, the girl stammered. It must have fallen in when I was helping you arrange the dough. Liar, Franklin roared. Jennifer saw him sweep his arm across the table, knocking items to the floor. 2 years. 2 years I've given you everything, and this is how you repay me. Jennifer shifted again, desperate to see who Franklin was speaking to. Through the window, she glimpsed a girl with long brown hair backing away from Franklin. When she turned slightly, Jennifer gasped. Even in profile, even after 2 years, she recognized her daughter's face. Sophie had grown taller, her face thinner, her hair longer. But the large glasses frames were the same, and the way she held, her shoulders when scared, was unmistakable. Jennifer clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a sob. Sophie was alive. Her daughter was alive and had been here, just blocks from their home, for 2 years. The realization was both ecstatic and horrifying. That's it, Franklin said, running his hands through his hair. We're done here. It's too risky to keep you here now. He grabbed keys from his pocket. You have 5 minutes to gather your things. We're leaving tonight somewhere no one will ever find us. No, please, Sophie begged, trying to pull away in the confined space. I don't want to go. This isn't a discussion, Franklin said coldly. 5 minutes or we leave with nothing. Jennifer realized with horror that her suspicions were correct. Sophie had been held captive in this hidden room all this time. And if Franklin took her away tonight, Jennifer might never see her daughter again. She fumbled for her phone, dialing Martinez. To her relief, he answered. Detective Martinez, he said professionally. It's Jennifer Walsh, she whispered urgently. I found Sophie. She's alive, at Franklin's bakery storage, building behind the main store. Jennifer, slow down, Martinez responded, instantly alert. Where are you exactly? I'm outside the storage building behind Franklin's bakery, she explained, words tumbling out. I can see Sophie through the window. Franklin's been keeping her in a hidden room these past 2 years, and now he's planning to take her away tonight. He's loading a van right now. Do not approach them, Martinez instructed firmly. Stay where you are and keep observing. I'm sending units to your location immediately. Jennifer watched in growing panic as Franklin grabbed Sophie's arm, forcing her to pack a small backpack. Hurry up, she whispered, seeing Franklin pull Sophie toward the door. Units are on the way, Martinez assured her. Stay hidden and do not engage. I'll be there in less than 5 minutes. Please hurry, Jennifer pleaded, eyes fixed on the window. He's going to take her away. Jennifer, listen to me, Martinez said firmly. Do not approach Franklin. He's clearly dangerous, and you could put both yourself and Sophie at risk. Wait for backup. Jennifer knew he was right, but fear gripped her as Franklin roughly guided Sophie toward the storage building's door. They'd be outside any moment, and if they reached the vehicle she'd seen earlier, they could disappear before the police arrived. I'm 3 minutes out, Martinez said. Units should be arriving any second. Stay hidden. Jennifer heard sirens in the distance but worried they wouldn't arrive in time. Franklin opened the storage building door, checking outside before pulling Sophie with him. They emerged into the pre-dawn darkness, Franklin gripping Sophie's arm as he hurried her toward the car parked beside the building. We need to be on the road before anyone realizes we're gone, Franklin snapped, yanking Sophie's arm. When she hesitated. Please don't do this, Sophie begged, her voice carrying in the quiet dawn. I want to go home. You lost your chance when you put that bracelet in the bread, Franklin said. I took care of you when your mother abandoned you. She didn't abandon me, Sophie cried. You took me from her. Franklin's face contorted with anger. I saved you. Your mother wouldn't understand you like I do. All those books you love. Who got them for you? Who built you a safe place? Who protected you from the world? Sirens grew louder. Franklin panicked, his head jerking toward the sound. He cursed and shoved Sophie toward the van more forcefully. "Get in now," he ordered, his voice rising with desperation. Jennifer knew she couldn't wait. If they drove away, they could vanish forever. Despite Martinez's warnings, she stepped from the shadows. "Sophie," she called, her voice breaking with emotion. They both froze. Sophie's eyes widened, finding her mother's face in the dim light. "Mom," she whispered as if afraid to believe it. "Get in the van," Franklin ordered, yanking Sophie's arm. "Let her go," Jennifer said, stepping closer. "The police are coming. It's over." Franklin's expression darkened. "She's mine now," he said, pulling Sophie toward the van. "We have a life together. You'll never understand what we have." Sophie twisted in his grip, trying to break free, her eyes never leaving Jennifer's face. "Mom!" she cried again, reaching out with her free hand. Jennifer rushed forward, driven by maternal instinct and 2 years of desperate searching. She grabbed Sophie's outstretched hand, holding it tightly. Franklin yanked Sophie back, creating a tug-of-war with the terrified girl caught in the middle. "Let go of her," Franklin shouted at Jennifer. "She belongs with me now." "Let go of my daughter," Jennifer shouted, gripping Sophie's hand. She could feel her daughter trembling, see tears streaming down her face in the dim light. Police cars screeched into the alley, their lights painting the scene in red and blue. Officers emerged, weapons drawn. "Police, don't move!" one shouted. Franklin pushed Jennifer hard, trying to separate her from Sophie, but Jennifer held on. When he realized he couldn't break their connection, Franklin bolted for the van, abandoning Sophie in a desperate attempt to escape. He managed 3 steps before 2 officers tackled him to the ground. Franklin struggled briefly before they subdued him, snapping handcuffs around his wrists as he shouted incoherently. Jennifer pulled Sophie into her arms, both crying as they sank to the ground. After 2 years of separation, the reunion was overwhelming. Jennifer touched Sophie's face, her hair, her shoulders, as if to convince herself it was real. "I tried to get away," Sophie sobbed into her mother's shoulder. "I tried so many times." "You're safe now," Jennifer assured her, stroking her hair. "You're safe. I've got you." Detective Martinez approached, his expression a mix of amazement and concern. "I told you to wait," he said to Jennifer, though there was no real anger in his voice. "He was going to take her away," she replied simply, not loosening her hold on Sophie. Martinez nodded, then knelt to Sophie's level. "Hello, Sophie," he said gently. "I'm Detective Martinez. I've been looking for you for a very long time." Emergency medical personnel arrived to check Sophie's condition. Jennifer kept hold of her daughter's hand as the paramedics examined her, unwilling to let go even for a moment. The EMTs reported Sophie appeared physically unharmed, but recommended a full hospital examination. "I want to go home," Sophie said quietly. "We need to stop at the hospital first," Jennifer explained gently. "And the police need to ask you some questions. But then we'll go home. I promise. We need to get her statement while everything's fresh," Martinez said to Jennifer as the paramedics finished. "I promise to keep it brief for today." Sophie clung to her mother as they were guided to a police cruiser. The ride to the station passed in a blur of emotion, Jennifer staring at her daughter's profile, afraid she might disappear if she looked away. She noticed the changes in Sophie's face. Still her daughter, but older than her 14 years, her expression carrying a weariness that broke Jennifer's heart. At the station, they were ushered through a side entrance, avoiding reporters already gathering at the main doors, alerted by scanner chatter about a missing child found alive after 2 years. Martinez escorted them to an interview room designed to be less intimidating, with softer lighting, comfortable chairs, and a table with water bottles and tissues. Jennifer sat beside Sophie, her arm protectively around her daughter's shoulders. The fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows under Sophie's eyes, highlighting her exhaustion. But Jennifer couldn't stop looking at her, couldn't believe she was really here. Sophie sat wrapped in a blanket, a cup of hot chocolate in her hands, as Martinez gently questioned her about her captivity. Sophie explained how Franklin had lured her away at the market 2 years ago, telling her that her mother had been in an accident, and he was supposed to take her to the hospital. By the time I realized we weren't going to the hospital, we were already at the bakery, Sophie said. He locked me in that room behind the storage building. He told me you didn't want me anymore, that you were glad I was gone. Jennifer made a small sound of distress, and Sophie squeezed her hand. I didn't believe him, Sophie continued. Not really, but he took my phone and I couldn't get out. The door had a code lock and the window was too small. He said, if I tried to escape, he'd hurt you. How did your bracelet end up in the bread? Martinez asked. He made me help with the bread sometimes, Sophie explained. When he wasn't looking, I dropped my bracelet in the dough. I remembered what Mom taught me about leaving clues if I was ever lost. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Her daughter had remembered the safety lessons they'd practiced years ago and applied them in the most ingenious way possible. I wasn't sure it would work, Sophie admitted. I thought the bracelet might melt in the oven or that no one would find it, but I had to try something. Jennifer looked at her daughter with wonder. Sophie, she said softly, putting the bracelet in the dough was so brave, so clever. She paused, studying her daughter's face. But honey, how did you know it wouldn't melt in that hot oven? Sophie met her mother's gaze, a flicker of her former self shining through the exhaustion. I wasn't sure, Mom, she admitted. But I remembered you telling me the pendant was amethyst, a type of quartz, and the beads were glass. And the cord wasn't just plastic, you said it was a strong, special fiber. Jennifer remembered that day clearly. Sophie admiring the bracelet in a store window. Jennifer explaining why the higher price was worth it for quality materials. Tears of pride welled in her eyes. Oh, Sophie, she whispered, hugging her. Chilit, you were so smart, so incredibly brave. Martinez nodded. She absolutely was. That clue, Sophie, that single act is what brought you home. The investigation revealed Franklin's double life, a respected baker who had secretly kept Sophie isolated for 2 years, convincing her that her family had abandoned her. In his twisted mind, he believed he was rescuing Sophie, providing her with the books she loved and creating a safe space away from the world. He kept bringing me those Moonstone books, Sophie said. He said they were my favorites, and that proved he knew me better than anyone else. He was so mad when I told him I'd already read them all. As the questioning continued, Jennifer learned the full extent of Sophie's captivity. The small hidden room where she'd spent most of 2 years, allowed out only occasionally to help in the bakery when no one else was around, given enough food and necessities, but denied freedom and contact with the outside world. Sophie's resilience, maintaining hope, searching for ways to signal her presence, culminating in placing her bracelet in the dough, filled Jennifer with both heartbreak and pride. Martinez closed his notebook, explaining they'd need more detailed statements later, but the basics were enough for now. Officers had seized Franklin's computer from the bakery, finding disturbing evidence of his obsession. Will I have to see him again? Sophie asked quietly. In court? Martinez shook his head reassuringly. We're doing everything possible to avoid that. Franklin is already talking, hoping for leniency in sentencing. We have more than enough evidence without putting you through a trial. Relief washed over Sophie's face. Good. I don't want to see him ever again. You won't have to, Jennifer assured her, squeezing her hand. A police psychologist spoke briefly with Sophie, explaining to Jennifer afterward that recovery would take time. Sophie had spent 2 formative years, from 12 to 14, in isolation, missing school, friends, and normal development. There would be adjustments, therapy, possibly setbacks. But the doctor emphasized Sophie's remarkable resilience, evidenced by her clever escape plan. As they left the station, pale morning light filtered through the high windows, casting soft shadows across the parking lot. Jennifer kept her arm around Sophie's shoulders, feeling how thin she'd become. The road ahead would be long, filled with healing from invisible scars. Therapy and difficult conversations awaited, but they would face it together. For the first Time in 2 years, Jennifer's heart felt complete. Her daughter was home.